And even Democrat senators say, I can't believe it. They didn't raid the house of Joe Biden. They didn't raid Obama.
But Joe Biden didn't ignore a subpoena to get those documents back.
And we start with a classic of the genre. What about Biden? This ploy only works for its supporters because each president had a different situation with the documents. In Biden's case, it was cooperation with the authorities. And in Trump's case, it was blatant ignoring and hiding. But why go into the details when you can just shift the focus?
Like
Joe
you
Biden
did. And
took
so that's the question.
1,850 boxes.
But that's the question that investigators have, I think, is why you held on to those documents when you knew the federal government was seeking them and then had given you a subpoena to return them.
Are you ready? Are you ready? Can I talk?
Yeah, what's
you
the
mind?
answer?
Do you mind?
I would like for you to answer the question.
Okay.
When it is difficult to answer in substance, the easiest thing to do is to get personal. Calling your opponent a nasty person is clearly not the level one expects from a leader aspiring to the highest office. But apparently, this is an attempt to divert attention from the fact that he simply has no real answer.
It's very simple to answer.
That's why I asked it.
It's very simple to, you're a nasty person, I'll tell you. If you look at what's gone to our country has gone to hell. Our borders are bad. Our military has been bad.
Accusations of destroying the country are surprisingly common, especially from those who have created many problems themselves. Inflation, borders, the army, all these problems did not appear overnight. They are long-lasting processes, the responsibility for which lies with those who were in power before. But it's easier to blame someone else, right?
You look at the taxes, you look at inflation, what's happened to inflation, it's just destroying our country. We've really become, in many ways, a third world country. And it's very sad what's happened in this administration. And it's something that will turn around on day one. We were energy independent. Now energy is at a level that we've never had to pay before. Nobody can afford to continue to pay what's happening with energy. But we were energy independent. We were getting out of Afghanistan with strength and with dignity. And instead we got out, we looked like fools, probably the most embarrassing moment in the history of our country. One of the big problems was that Nancy Pelosi, Crazy Nancy as I affectionately call her, Crazy Nancy Pelosi.
When there's nothing to back up your arguments, hurtful nicknames come to the rescue. Crazy Nancy has long been Trump's favorite target. But here's the interesting thing. All these accusations are somehow never backed up by real facts, only by buzzwords.
And the mayor of Washington were in charge, as you know, of security. And they did not do their job.
They're not in charge of the National Guard. You're in charge of the National Guard.
Well, I offered them National Guard. I said, we'll give you soldiers, we'll give you National Guard, we'll give you whatever you want. And they turned me down.
You're
and in
acting
fact,
defense
she turned me down. She turned me down in writing.
But you said you weren't very involved that day. You did tell your supporters to come to Washington. You tweeted about it, about that speech that happened on the rally.
Am I allowed to say that?
When they went to the Capitol and they were breaking into the Capitol, smashing windows, injuring police officers, why did it take you 3 hours to tell them to go home?
I don't believe it did. Oh, let me pull it out. I have to pull it out. So if you look at, on January 5th, the day before, I said, please support our Capitol Police and law enforcement. They are truly on the side of our country. Stay peaceful. Stay peaceful. This was the day before, and this was in the form of Twitter. Now I use Truth Social. I think it's far superior, okay? I hope everybody's on Truth. If you look January 6th, this is before 2:30. I am asking for everyone at the U.S. Capitol to remain peaceful.
It's fascinating how selectively the facts are presented. Mentioning tweets the day before the events is an attempt to cover up a complete lack of action at a critical moment, even assuming he was calling for peace. What prevented him from doing it louder, more insistently, and earlier?
This is right after, as it was happening. But what happened is they took it down. I don't know why. I think they took it down because it was so good. They didn't like it being up there. I am asking, and we didn't know until I got it back, because now I have 90 million people waiting for me to go back, but I'm on Truth and I'm staying on Truth. Listen, I am asking for everyone at the U.S. Capitol to remain peaceful. No violation. We want no violation. We want no violence. Remember, we are the party of law and order. Respect the law and our great men and women in blue. Thank you. That was at 2:30. That was very early.
Mr. President, I looked at the same timeline that you did.
No, I
Once
know,
it was
but you
clear,
didn't report that. You know why? Because it was
we
taken
did report
down.
it. I was reporting that
It was
day.
taken down and it wasn't
But
put
when it
back
was
up.
clear to you that they were not being peaceful, you saw them rushing the Capitol, breaking windows. They were hitting officers with flagpoles, tasing them, beating them up. When it was clear they weren't being peaceful, why did you wait 3 hours to tell them to leave the Capitol? They listened to you like no one else. You know that.
They do. I agree with that. But
So why didn't
Nancy
you tell them to go home sooner?
Nancy Pelosi and the mayor are in charge. I assume they were able to do their job. They weren't.
But
And it
Pelosi's
kicked
not in charge of Capitol
And if you remember,
security.
I made a video right outside the Oval Office in the Rose Garden. And I'm very proud of that video. I didn't have a script. I don't need scripts like a certain person that's in
Well,
there
what
right
time?
now.
The video. It came out much later after they had already
That's
attacked
right,
the
yeah.
Capitol. Going back to your influence, in
Here's
that
another
3
one I
hours,
posted.
over 140 officers were injured that day.
And a person named Ashley Babbitt was killed.
Yes.
You know what? She was killed, and she shouldn't have been killed. And that thug that killed her, there was no reason to shoot her.
The Ashley Babbitt tragedy is a real drama that Trump is skillfully using for political purposes. Instead of analyzing the reasons that led to her death, there are accusations against the police, ignoring that her actions that day threatened the safety of others.
At blank range, cold blank range, they shot her, and she was a good person. She was a patriot.
One
There was
person
no
who was
reason
there-
there was no reason. And he went on television to brag about the fact that he killed her.
The officer was not bragging about the fact that he
Oh,
killed
he
her,
was
but one
bragging.
person.
Will you pardon the January 6 rioters who were convicted of federal offenses?
I am inclined to pardon many of them.
Promising to pardon the participants in the attack on the Capitol is no longer just a political move, but a direct endorsement of actions that threaten democracy. How does such a pardon fit with the idea of the party of law and order?
I can't say for every single one because a couple of them probably they got out of control. But, you know, when you look at Antifa, what they've done to Portland, and if you look at Antifa, look at what they've done to Minneapolis and so many other places. Look at what they did to Seattle and BLM. Many people were killed. These people, I'm not trying to justify anything. But you have two standards of justice in this country, and what they've done, and I love that question, because what they've done to so many people is nothing. And then what they've done to these people, they've persecuted these people. And yeah, my answer is I am most likely, if I get in, I will most likely, I would say it will be a large portion of them. You know, they did a very, and it'll be very early on. And they're living in hell right now.
So when it comes
they're
to
living in
pardons-
hell. And they're policemen, and they're firemen, and they're soldiers, and they're carpenters and electricians, and they're great people. Many of them are just great people.
Mr. President, one of the people who was convicted was a former policeman, but he was convicted of attacking a police officer, I should note. But when you said you are considering pardoning a large portion of those charged with crimes on January 6th, does that include the 4 Proud Boys members who were charged and convicted of seditious conspiracy?
I don't know. I'd have to look at their case, but I will say in Washington, D.C., you cannot get a fair trial. You cannot. Just like in New York City, you can't get a fair trial either. This woman, I don't know her. I never met her. I have no idea who she is. I had a picture taken years ago with her and her husband, nice guy, John Johnson. He was a newscaster, very nice man. She called him an ape. Happens to be African American. Called him an ape. The judge wouldn't allow us to put that in. Her dog or her cat was named Vagina. The judge wouldn't allow to put that in. All of these things. But with her, they can put in anything. Access
This
Hollywood.
was a jury of 9 people who found
That's right.
you liable of sexual abuse. Do you think that will deter women from voting for you?
No, I don't think so, because I think the whole thing, just so you understand, ready? I never met this woman. I never saw this woman. This woman said, I met her at the front door of Bergdorf Goodman, which I rarely go into, other than for a couple of charities. I met her in the front door. She was about 60 years old, and this is like 22, 23 years ago. I met her in the front door of Bergdorf Goodman. I was immediately attracted to her, and she was immediately attracted to me. And we had this great chemistry. We're walking into a crowded department store. We had this great chemistry, and a few minutes later, we end up in a room, a dressing room of Bergdorf Goodman, right near the cash register. And then she found out there were locks on the door. So she said, I found one that was open. She found one. She learned this at trial. She found one that was open. What kind of a woman meets somebody and brings them up, and within minutes you're playing hanky-panky in a dressing room, okay? I don't know if she was married then or not. John Johnson, I feel sorry for you, John Johnson.
Mr. President, can I?
What is the first thing you would do to help bring down the cost to make things more affordable?
Drill, baby, drill. You know that. When we have a debt limit, and they use that very seriously at me, they came in, Schumer came in with Nancy Pelosi, and they were using it, we'll violate it, we'll do whatever. They talked a whole lot different than they do right now. I say to the Republicans out there, congressmen, senators, if they don't give you massive cuts, you're going to have to do a default. And I don't believe they're going to do a default, because I think the Democrats will absolutely cave, because you don't want to have that happen. But it's better than what we're doing right now, because we're spending money like drunken sailors.
So
You know
just
the
to be clear,
expression?
Mr. President, you think the U.S. should default if the White House does not agree to the spending cuts Republicans
Well,
are
you might
demanding?
as well do it now, because you'll do it later. Because we have to save this country. Our country is dying. Our country is being destroyed by stupid people, by very stupid people.
You once said that using the debt ceiling as a negotiating wedge just could not happen. You said that when you were in the
That's
Oval
when I was
Office.
president.
So why is it different now that you're out of office?
Because now I'm not president. We have a very big mental health problem in this country. And again, it's not the gun that pulls the trigger, it's the person that pulls the trigger. And we have to protect our Second Amendment. We have to protect our Second Amendment.
Mr. President, you dealt with a lot of mass shootings when you were in office. This year, there have already been more than 200 mass shootings in 2023. If you are reelected, are there any new gun restrictions that you would sign into law?
I would do numerous things. For instance, schools, we would harden, very, very much harden. And I'm a very believer. I believe in teachers. I love teachers. I think they're incredible. And they love the children, not quite like the parents, but they love the children in many cases almost as much. Many of these teachers are soldiers, ex-policemen. They're people that really understand weapons. And you don't need 5% of the teachers would be more than you could ever have if you're going to hire security guards. But in addition to that, have security guards, you have to harden your entrances. You have to make schools safe. And you can make other places safe. But it is a big mental health problem in this country more than anything else. If you look at Chicago, Chicago has the single toughest gun policies in the nation. They are so tough you can't breathe. New York, too, and other places also. All of those places are the worst and most dangerous places. So that's not the answer. I consider the other side to be radical, because the other side, under Roe v. Wade and other things, the other side, they're radical because they will. Remember the debate with Hillary Clinton? I said, rip the baby out of the womb at the end of the 9th month. They will kill the baby in the 9th month. If you look at that crazy governor of Virginia from the former governor, where he said, no, the baby will be born, and then we'll decide essentially whether or not to execute the baby.
But, Mr. President, can we talk about what you would do if
these are the radical people. It's not the pro-life people that are radical.
But if you are reelected and you're...
People that will kill a baby in the 9th month or the 8th month or the 7th month or after the baby is born, they're the radicals, not the pro-life people.
I just want to give you...
You're going to have millions of people pouring into our country right now at a level that nobody's ever seen before. These people are sick. Anybody that wants this to happen to our country, they're destroying our country, and this should not be allowed to happen. How they're not going to do a version of Title 42 or my Title 42, which was tough. If people are sick and have infectious diseases and lots of other problems, we don't want them being into our country. We have enough problems right now. We have problems like we've never had in the history of our country.
But, Mr. President,
our country is being destroyed. A country has to have borders. There's never been anything like is happening to our country right now.
You built about 52 miles of new wall when you were in office, Mr. President. It wasn't the complete wall. One other thing that with immigration...
No, but I have to respond to that.
With your immigration, it was only about 52 miles of new wall.
This is what she does. I built hundreds of miles. Some of the wall was up there, and it would be laying on the ground, rusted, rotten steel, rusted, rotten wood, and what the radical left crazy Democrats did, if there's a piece of wood laying down, they consider that a wall. I built 30-foot walls that go down 7 feet into the ground. If there was a little piece of wood sitting in the ground, they said, oh, he's not building a wall. We already had a wall. Because this is the game. They're a party of disinformation.
It's not a game, Mr. President. It's about 52 miles of new wall. What other immigration policy you had when you were in office?
I built new wall.
52 miles,
for hundreds of miles.
CBP, Mr.
What I
President.
did is I replaced other wall that was laying down, that was up and rotting in the ground for 30 years. If I were president, this would have never happened. And even the Democrats admit that. Putin knew it would have never happened. And his pipeline would have never happened. A lot of things would have never happened. But this would never have happened. And all those dead people, both Russian and Ukrainian, they wouldn't be dead today. And all those cities that are blown up and disintegrated right to the ground, that wouldn't have happened.
Would you give Ukraine weapons and funding?
I was impeached by a crazy woman named Nancy Pelosi.
But the question here is, would you give Ukraine weapons and funding if you were elected?
I would sit down. Let me just put it a nicer way. If I'm president, I will have that war settled in one day, 24 hours.
How would you settle that war in one day?
Because I'll meet with Putin, I'll meet with Zelensky. They both have weaknesses and they both have strengths.
Solve the war in 24 hours. That's a surprising statement. If he really had such a plan, why didn't he propose it earlier? Or maybe it's all just buzzwords without specifics to please his audience.
And within 24 hours, that war will be settled. It'll be over. It'll be absolutely over.
Do you want Ukraine to win this war?
I don't think in terms of winning and losing. I think in terms of getting it settled so we stop killing all these people and breaking down this country.
Why did you take those documents with you when you left the White House?
I had every right to under the Presidential Records Act. You have the Presidential Records Act. I was there and I took what I took, and it gets declassified. Biden, on the other hand, he has 1,850 boxes. He had boxes sent to Chinatown, where they don't speak even English in that Chinatown we're talking about.
I got to stop you right there.
Nobody talks about him. They talk about us. Just so you understand, I had every right to do it. I didn't make a secret of it. You know, the boxes were stationed outside of the White House. People were taking pictures of the GSA of the various people.
I got to stop you right there, though, because the Presidential Records Act, which is not well known to a lot of people, I read it. It does not say that you can take documents with you. It says actually that they are the property of the federal government.
It says you talk, you negotiate, you make a deal. It's not criminal, by the way. The Presidential Records Act is not criminal. And just so you know,
it does not say you can negotiate to take the documents with you.
Can I tell you? Just so you understand, the Presidential Records Act is not criminal. I took the documents. I'm allowed to. You know who else took them? Obama took them. Nixon took them.
Comparisons to Obama and Nixon are a classic ploy to shift attention from themselves to others. But there's a nuance. Neither of them broke the law to the extent that Trump did. Ignoring subpoenas and obstructing investigations is a different category.
Obama
Reagan
did not take documents.
Oh, he didn't?
The difference here that I'd like to know.
Reagan
the National Archives says that President Obama
even Jimmy
did not
Carter,
take documents.
even Mike Pence had some documents, and he's a very honorable guy.
You referenced
But you know
Biden.
who took them more than anybody is Joe Biden. He has 1,800 boxes,
That's
and nobody
accurate,
even knows where they are. 1,800, and nobody talks about him.
What
It included
happened when
a
you had
raid
those
on my
documents?
house. That's what it included.
But
they didn't raid.
You'd gotten a subpoena, and they had not been turned over yet.
They didn't raid Biden's house. You know what happened? They put him in the house. That's the one with the Corvette, where the documents were laying all over the floor. That was fine. And you know who happens to be at Mar-a-Lago? Secret Service, and they're phenomenal. I have Secret Service. He didn't have Secret Service. The other thing, the vice president cannot declassify. He didn't have the right to declassify. He has documents from when he was a senator. And even Democrat senators say, I can't believe it. They didn't raid the house of Joe Biden. They didn't raid Obama.
But Joe Biden didn't ignore a subpoena to get those documents back like you did.
And so that's the question. 1,850 boxes.
But that's the question that investigators have, I think, is why you held on to those documents when you knew the federal government was seeking them and then had given you a subpoena to return them.
Are you ready? Are you ready? Can I talk?
Yeah, what's the answer?
Do you mind?
I would like for you to answer the question.
Okay, it's very simple to answer.
That's why I asked it.
It's very simple to. You're a nasty person, I'll tell you.
Can you answer why you held on to the documents?
I was negotiating, and we were talking to NARA, that's Washington, to bring whatever they want. They can have whatever they want. When we left Washington, we had the boxes lined up on the sidewalk outside for everybody. People are taking pictures of them. Everybody knew we were taking those boxes. And the GSA, the government service, the GSA was the one taking them. They brought them down to Mar-a-Lago. We were negotiating with NARA. All of a sudden, they raid our house. When Biden has his documents, he won't give back the 1,850 boxes. And you're going to find some real gems in there. Let me ask you a question. Why is it that Biden had 9 boxes in Chinatown? And he gets a lot of money from China. Why is that? And
There
why,
is no
why
evidence
aren't
of that,
people?
Mr. President. No, you cannot
why
say
aren't
that. There
people
is no
bringing that
evidence
up?
of that, Mr.
And why don't
President.
they put this
What
guy
you're
Jack
referring
Smith
to
and his
is an
group
office that he
of
had.
thugs?
Mr.
Why don't
President,
they put him in charge of that?
I need to stop you right there because there's no evidence of what you just said there. What you're referring to there is an office that he had after leaving
That's at the University
vice
of Pennsylvania.
presidency.
Wrong.
He had a temporary office. But I want to ask you about another investigation
You're so
that you're
wrong.
facing.
You don't know the subject.
I do know the subject.
He had
and
one
I do
at
know
University
the
of
facts, Mr.
Pennsylvania,
President.
but he also had
I want
9
to move
boxes
on to another
in
investigation that
Chinatown.
you're facing, which is the one that's
She doesn't
happening
understand
in
it.
Georgia, where
We are really putting it to Biden, but he's putting it to himself because the economy stinks, inflation is horrible, and the border is a disaster. And by the way he got out of Afghanistan was the single most embarrassing moment in the history of our country. And you know what? If I don't win, this country is going to be in big trouble. It's so sad to see what's happening.
but no commitment there on the accepting the results regardless of the outcome.
If it's an honest election, correct, I will.
Okay.
Again, doubts about the fairness of the election. It has become almost a refrain. If I win, it means everything is fair. If I lose, it means a conspiracy. This approach is clearly not conducive to confidence in the electoral system.
So not committing to accepting the 2024 election results or acknowledging what happened in 2020.
Go ahead.
President Trump, I want to thank you for coming here tonight. This is an important conversation with voters to hear and to have. Thank you to our audience and to our host, St. Anselm College.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Katie. Good job. Thank you, Katie. Thank you very much. I like you guys. We love New Hampshire. Thank you, Woody. Good luck, Woody.